I'm going to talk about heartbreak today. In 1971, the summer before my last year in seminary, I was sent to a very small town in eastern North Carolina. The town had 600 people in it as its total population. One unusual thing about the town was that there were two Episcopal churches in that town. One was St. Anne's Church, an African-American church, and the other was St. Luke's, a Caucasian church. They were about 200 feet apart, the buildings were, and they were completely and utterly separate. Each little congregation had its own life that it lived and enjoyed. I would do two services on Sunday. At 9 o'clock, I would go to St. Anne's and then rush from there to the other church, St. Luke's, to do the 11 o'clock service there. It was a wild summer. At St. Anne's, I would preach, and one Sunday, the congregation of about 15 people stopped me and said, "You are preaching like a white boy." And they said, "We're going to teach you how to preach." And so they coached me every Sunday during my sermon with, "Yes, hallelujah, no, don't say that. Go hit this way." So I would get all excited at St. Anne's, and I would rush over to St. Luke's, which had a blind and deaf organist. That's another story. The choir, when they thought I'd gotten too excited in my sermon, they would reach out and tap the organist on the shoulder, and she would begin playing, and that was the end of that sermon. Any effort to join these two small congregations together failed, and there were several. The black church, St. Anne's, needed a new roof, and it was falling apart. St. Luke's was in pretty good shape, but neither congregation was in the least interested in merging with the other. They were separated from each other in their own pride and prejudice. So I went to the bishop, and the bishop found me enough money to put a new roof on St. Anne's Church. 2 months later, that church collapsed because the new roof was too heavy for the weak foundation. Pride and prejudice are never strong foundations. After the collapse, an interesting thing happened. People from both congregations called me up, and their message was identical. We are heartbroken. A part of our town, a part of our life, a part of our being has been destroyed. After a while, the calls stopped, and about 3 months later, I heard the news that the two congregations had merged, and they had become one. Black and white together in church in a small eastern North Carolina town, and it continues so to this day. The two congregations had found a new life and a renewed life and energy out of their heartbreak. It took heartbreak to break the walls around their hearts and to open the way to a new life. In this city, we know about heartbreak. There's so much of it. The heartbreak of COVID and so many deaths, the heartbreak of systems and supplies and people stretched beyond their capacity, the heartbreak of brave frontline servants, medical, police, fire, teachers, bicyclists, food delivery, MTA workers, sanitation workers, all risking and sacrificing to serve the citizens, us. There's the heartbreak of social isolation, especially for single people and families with children. There's the heartbreak of the homeless and the hungry who have nowhere to go. The heartbreak of the inequities of health care for Blacks, Latinos, especially the heartbreak of Ahmaud Arbery's death in Georgia this week, and the rise of violence, racial violence, and white supremacy. These days, our city and our world are full of heartbreak. Writing about heartbreak, a poet named David White has said, "Heartbreak is the natural outcome of caring for people and things over which we have no control, of holding in our affections those who move beyond our sight. Heartbreak is how we mature. Yet we use the word as if it only occurs when things have gone wrong. Heartbreak is the hidden DNA of our relationship with life, an inescapable and often beautiful question. Something and someone who has always been with us will carry us." Has your heart been broken? A broken heart is a heart that is open to being remade, like the two little churches in North Carolina, stubborn in their pride and prejudices and the walls they had built around themselves. But when the heartbreak came, their hearts were broken open and they were remade. What does heartbreak look like in your life? Do not be afraid to answer that question. Where hearts are broken is a place where God can work, to mend, to heal, to restore, to liberate. God is always a specialist in mending broken hearts and bringing new life. So I say, Lord Jesus, let our minds rest in your word. Let our spirits rest in your never failing presence, for you are with us always. When doubt and grief overwhelm us, open our eyes to see your steady presence and your hand at work in our life. Empower us to turn with hope toward the future that you prepare for us, and move us forward with strength and energy toward each other in charity, and keep us in the wealth of your forgiveness and hope, trusting in the promise of Jesus' resurrection. Amen.